Hey everyone, South Bay Rebel here, and I am finally getting back to you with some more Star Wars The Black Series content. We're going to be looking at 3 figures today. We've got Baylan Skoll, Shin Hati, and R5-D4. And I picked these up a little while ago, gave a brief preview, and I'm finally circling back to dive in and get them out of the package, in hand, and see how good they really are. And while all these are relatively new, we'll look at Shin and Baylan first, since they're from the same Ahsoka wave. Box art looks really nice. I love the artwork on the back as well as the side and the mural. You can tell they look good together when pressed up against each other, and it's just a nice touch. I know that there's new packaging that's in the works for the Black Series, so I'm really curious to see what changes they make and if they're going to be going away from the mural look. I've really only seen some of the new packaging styling on a lot of the 2-packs that have been releasing lately, and those are wider than these, so I'm not sure that they would really fit into the mural aspect of it anyways. Personally, I don't save the boxes. I wish I could, I just don't have the space. But I do appreciate the mural artwork as well as the art on the back. I think it's really nicely done and just a nice touch for collectors overall. If you'd like to read the bios on the back of these boxes, feel free to pause. But moving on, I did want to note that Hati and Skoll, or Skoll and Hati, or Hati, those are actually figures that are well known in Norse mythology. For those who didn't know, they are the 2 wolves that chase the sun and the moon. And if they catch it, it signifies the beginning of Ragnarok. So it's pretty cool stuff if you want to read up on it. Not sure what the motivation behind naming these characters was behind it, but I think it's cool that they're incorporating some of that in, and I don't think it was a complete coincidence. Looking at Baylan first, out of the box, he looks pretty decent. I like the sculpting on the armor. I think that's very nice. It even has a bit of a Game of Thrones kind of a feel to it. Definitely got some old school vibes here from eras in the past of our own mythology, you know, the medieval times and whatnot. I really like the outfit here. The green kind of corroding on the armor, if that's what that is supposed to be, or a patina, is a little bit much, but it is accurate to the show. He did have that kind of old vintage look to the armor that's a little worn and patinaed, so I appreciate that they've incorporated that in. I just don't think it was executed as well as they could have on the paint apps, but still a nice touch nonetheless, and it kind of breaks up the all black of the armor, so I appreciate it. I don't think it looks horrible, but it's just a little too bright, and I think they could have done a little bit better of a job, but overall pretty nice. Now, there's been a lot of complaints about this figure, and most of them have been around its height. They just really did a bad job on that, and especially considering his lightsaber is also really, really long. So the fact that he's underscaled on the height and then given this like really long lightsaber is kind of a double negative for this figure. He looks good in a multitude of poses. I think the face application is pretty well done as well. But here's that lightsaber. I even took it off the hilt, and you can see how far it stretches up from the base of his feet to his body. I mean, it's like more than half of his height, and that's without the hilt. So it's really long. It's kind of weird. And here he is again standing next to Shin. They're almost identical in height, and in the show, he's much taller than she is. So I think they messed up on both of the scales of these figures. She's a little too tall, he's a little too short. I've seen a bunch of people swap out legs and whatnot, so that is a possibility, but I don't think I'm going to be doing that. I'm hoping Hasbro fixes it on their own. As we look at Shin, I think she's the better looking of the two, just by a little bit, but I do really believe that. Here she is in a nice pose. She's always kind of hunched over and looking up in the show with those big eyes, and I think in the face apps they kind of missed the mark on capturing those expressions, but the figure otherwise looks good. The hair is a little off for me as well, it just seems a little stiff, but overall I think it's a good face sculpt. It just could have done with a little bit better paint apps, especially around the eyes, and maybe given her that kind of blank stare look with those big eyes that we see in the show so often. I got her into a multitude of nice poses, and she looks good from a bunch of angles. I really enjoy the armor on this figure. I think it's one of the best looking armor sets I've seen on a figure in a long time. I don't like the paint apps on the tan bits. I really think they could have done with some more weathering, but the metal pieces of armor look really nice and weathered, and I think all in all, the set of armor, just the entire figure's looks great. I really like the styling of it all, and it just could have done with a little more weathering on the tan pieces of her outfit. But other than that, I'm really impressed with this figure. She poses well and has a really cool lightsaber. I just wish they weathered the outfit a little more. As we look at Baylan's face up close, it's got some nice detail. I know they're coming out with another figure of him, and I think the only difference is he comes with a soft goods cloak, and they've maybe changed up the lightsaber. I heard some of them released with red, and then they went back and released some more with the more orange tone to it. And here you can see that armor, really nice detail on the belt buckle there, but you can see that green patina on the armor it just seems a little overdone, especially in how bright it is. It doesn't seem quite realistic. Now, as we look at Shin, here's an up close of the face again. I don't know if those freckles are just a defect on mine as far as the paint apps, or if that's accurate to the show, but you can see the eyes there. Just didn't quite capture her look, but otherwise nice face sculpt, and the paint apps are pretty decent in other regards. I just think the eyes are a little bit off. Again, really nice detail on the outfit. I just think it's a little too clean looking and could use some weathering with better paint apps, but I like the detail about the stitching on the back and the lines in it. Really nicely done. There's a couple two tones of tan here as well, so they did give it a little bit of contrast, but that lighter tan just needs a little bit of a weathering to it. Might do a wash on it myself if I'm feeling brave, or pick up a second one of these that I'm not afraid to mess with, but the gauntlets on the arms there look pretty good. So yeah, it's a nice armor set. I just wish the tan parts were a little more weathered. But all in all, the mold on this is great. I think it's got a lot of nice detail, and that detail looks good. And last but not least, we're gonna look at R5-D4. And if you know me, you know I like my droids. I was really stoked when this one was announced. Pre-ordered it, waited a long time between the pre-order and the time that it shipped. But when it finally got here, I was really impressed. I like having more droids in the lineup. I don't think there's quite enough. And I think this is a nice looking figure. It's a lot of red and blue, and that really pops against that white background. Lots of nice detail. He's basically got the same torso as R2-D2 and a lot of the same features as well as accessories, but the head and paint apps make it unique enough in its own right. Just like R2, the head pulls up and reveals this storage area where you can place some of those accessories. They kind of just wedge into those notches, as you can see here, and it's a little funky. It's not the best system, but I appreciate them giving us a place to store them. Here he is with the front flaps open and using a couple of those accessories. I think behind each of those vertical flaps, there are 3 openings for you to put them into, and you can also utilize the horizontal flaps that are built into the upper part of the torso. Those also actuate. None of the accessories work on the headpiece. At least it didn't feel like that main antenna was able to come out, and I didn't want to try too hard. Underneath, you've got the third leg that compresses up into the bottom, and it looks pretty flush, doesn't really hang down much. So if you want to store him or position him in that upright position, you can, and you can also pull that out. It has a couple different lengths that you can pull it out to depending on how much you want him to tilt back in the tilted position. And you think he looks good in both. I prefer this, looks like he's on the move, and I like that. It gives a little action and movement to the figure so it doesn't look so stiff. Again, really nice paint apps, lots of nice detailing on this one, and I couldn't be happier. It was definitely worth the wait, and I'm glad I finally got my hands on it. It's going to be on my permanent display for sure. Of the 3 figures, I definitely am a bit droid biased, but I think that R5 unit is the best of the bunch. All the rumors that they said about Baylan and Shin are true, and I think they just fall short. They were such good characters in the show, and I don't think they did them enough justice on these figures. I really hope they give them a retooling and fix those height issues going forward, so I'm anticipating Hasbro making those changes and doing them right the next time around. That's not to say that they're awful figures. I think they both have their strong suits, and again, I really like the armor on Shin. I think the face falls short, but I'm actually really curious to see what the community does in terms of 3D printing and custom painting of new heads and different paint apps on faces of this existing sculpt to see if they can improve it in the customization part of the community. I think that would be really neat to see. I know there's a lot of custom painting and 3D printing of new face sculpts out there, so curious to see what the community does with that one. And on that note, that's going to do it for this video. If you liked it, give it a thumbs up and subscribe so you don't miss out on any future content. And until next time, I will catch you on the flip side.